So, Alex, the day's finally here. You've been at the Helping Hands group home for 8 years. We've been through a lot in that time.
We have.
And now you're finally leaving to live with your brother.
My brother Gabe.
It says here he lives in Haven Springs, Colorado. Is that correct? That's a big move. Do you have any plans as far as school or a job?
My brother said I might pick up a few shifts at the bar he works at.
So you'd be dealing with people?
Maybe.
Does your brother know about your issues?
Is that an official interview question, Dr. Lin?
Alex, you know that I care about you. With everything that has happened, I just want what's best for you.
He doesn't know. No one will once I leave this place. I'll just be a normal girl in a normal town.
Life is Strange True Colors, announced last month, is the latest entry in the Life is Strange series. Developed by Deck 9, the studio behind Life is Strange Before the Storm, True Colors follows a new protagonist, Alex Chen, as she moves to the town of Haven Springs to reconnect with her brother Gabe, who she hasn't seen in 8 years. Unfortunately, tragedy soon strikes, and Alex must rely on her long suppressed power, the ability to read and influence people's emotions, to get to the bottom of what really happened to Gabe. Recently, I got to chat with Alex's voice and performance artist, Erika Mori, and Deck 9 narrative director, Felice Kuan, to find out more about the game and about Alex. And also, to fangirl a little bit, obviously.
Oh, thank you both so much. I'm so excited for this game, I can't even tell you.
Oh,
it looks
that means
awesome.
a lot.
It looks so awesome. Yeah, I was like, the reveal was just everything I was hoping for a new LIS game. And you know that meme with Rosa Diaz and the puppy? That's how I feel about Alex already. So I'm just like, I would die for her. So yeah, that's how I feel about it. But yeah, I'm just really excited to talk to you about her because yeah, it's like we got that taste of what's to come, but we still don't know a lot about Alex. So I'm hoping you can tell me a little bit more about her today. So Zach said in the deep dive that production for this game began in 2017. So basically straight after Before the Storm finished up. That's a long time.
It has been a long journey, hasn't it? Alex has changed and grown a lot over the development process. And Erika was an instrumental part of creating who Alex is. It was really interesting to see this person emerge. It's fascinating that people kind of gravitate toward her already, and I wonder if Alex is the definition of empathy, right? That's her power. And there's inherent in that is just being very open to other people and very receptive to what other people need. And I wonder if there's just something that's very appealing about that, just even in the way that she carries herself and speaks, that people are drawn to, because you're right, they know her so little, but people find her so appealing. But Alex is a person that has a long way to grow. And I think that she, you'll find in the beginning that she's kind of in an unhealthy place in terms of what emotions are and how she expresses them. And she goes on a pretty long journey of self-understanding, self-acceptance, and learning to pay attention to her own needs.
And Erika, what kind of first drew you to the role?
You know, I kind of tripped and fell into the role of Alex. I hadn't done any acting since high school. When I got this audition, it was my first audition, my first experience with callbacks, and Izzy and Felice have heard this before, but it wasn't until maybe my first or second callback that I even realized I was auditioning for the lead. I thought surely I was auditioning for like a tertiary character, because who would take this big of a chance to put the lead of a game in the hands of somebody who has zero acting experience? And I'm glad they took that chance, because I think that the development process being so long and so collaborative, so like wonderfully collaborative, was instrumental in the Alex that is presented to players in this game.
Yeah, because, well, I mean, I guess the series does have sort of prior with hiring, you know, fresh voice talent, with obviously Gonzalo Martin, who went on to win a BAFTA for his performance. So, you know, like, that's, the series definitely has a really good eye and ear for this kind of thing. But did you know anything about LAS before?
I sure didn't. I think the last game I may have played was like GoldenEye, or my grandma on her Game Boy. Like, my drug of choice is definitely books. It's definitely reading. But I have just been so welcomed and surprised by how wonderful this community and the fans are. And I love the world. I love the stories that you know, this franchise is brave enough to address and to tell.
So when you started off and you were reading for the character, like, how long before then did you kind of get a grasp on, you know, what Alex looks like and sort of what the trajectory of that character is? Because I mean, I've never actually seen a game script, but like, for a game like this, which is narrative based, you know, and the character, like, there's a lot of different tangents you can take. It must be a lot as an actor as well to kind of like find your bearings with all of that.
Yeah, you're dead on about it. And it's, I think, extremely exciting for an actor. So coming in at the very beginning, you know, I had not a dossier, but an overview of what. Yeah, exactly. This is your reading. This is your homework. I love homework though, but you know, understanding like, hey, here are some foundational elements about Alex, her history. And what was really great was the writing team, the creative team. They were like totally open to changing things and to adjusting based on what I was bringing to the character and therefore the story. So yeah, there are definitely some foundational elements. Like she comes from foster care, you know, she has a fractured family. She hasn't seen her brother in 8 years, so this reunion is incredibly important to her. She is an Asian American woman, and she has this power. You know, these were the stakes in the ground, but really how we filled in everything else was totally collaborative.
How does that work from a writing perspective? Like, you have, as Erika says, those pillars, and is everything else malleable as you go along? Because obviously the story must evolve and adapt to sort of fit that, right?
Yeah, it might be unique to each game. I think in this particular case, Erika was just somebody who was so active in that process and who brought so much that I think it kind of happened pretty organically. I know that, for example, really early on in the process, Erika, you and Han went out and spent some quality time together to develop that sibling dynamic. And so a lot of that energy, like we would see early scenes with them together, and then seeing how they were like, not just the script that we wrote, but just like being annoying to each other, just like in the waiting room. We would like take that into like future scenes with them. So it was a joy.
And the tech must have really helped with that too, because I mean, it looks gorgeous. It looks like so different to the previous games. You know, I mean, and they look great as well, but this is like above and beyond. And especially, so I've only seen a really short clip prior to this interview, which is when Alex is at the Helping Hand Center, and it's like it's all one shot on her, and like you can feel that performance because the tech is so good at not only communicating what she's saying, but also what she's feeling. And in a game about empathy, that's so important, right?
We definitely found that we didn't have to write as much. We could just put a situation, and then Erika would like, you know, do something very organic with her face, and
Yeah.
then we'd be like, okay, that's it. That's great. Yeah.
And the performance capture must have really helped with that. And I suppose having performance tech in-house, did that allow you to be, I guess, to have more time to fool around with it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think what was interesting from my perspective is, especially early on, but I would say throughout the process, Deck 9 and performance capture and animation, cinematics, all those techs were not afraid to continuously improve. So it really felt like being on the bleeding edge of this technology in the performance capture space, because it seemed like I would come in, you know, for a shoot and they were trying something just slightly different to try and get a higher fidelity capture of the performance. And that was incredibly cool to be a part of.
It's so strange because you don't really think about game development as having that agileness, you know, being able to sort of adapt on the fly. But yeah, it seems like this is it's new now, and it's almost like a stage production, which I suppose for you, Erika, is a bit easier, because I can't imagine getting into these suits and not having all these bits attached to you is easy, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely closer to game capture, is definitely closer to film and television than, you know, a theatrical performance where you're like, okay, we're going to start at the beginning and we're going to end at the end.
Was Alex's power, was that always was it always going to be that? Because I feel like it fits in so well with the Life is Strange universe, because it's always been about, you know, emotional connections anyway. But can you tell us a bit more about that power? Because like, it seems, I like it because it helps on a sort of narrative level, but it's also just vague enough that in a detective story, there's a little bit of wiggle room for things to get, you know, a bit interesting.
You're absolutely right. That's true. Yeah, Alex did go through changes, you know, in pre-production, and then also once we had Erika. I know that we always did want to deal with emotions, emotional health, mental health, and I think pretty early on the power as it is now developed, we were excited because this power allowed a lot of very custom experiences. So in the deeper ones where you explore the inner life of the main characters,
Right.
None of those are the same experience, so that should be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, does that make it harder for you, Erika, almost to find your interpretation of a character that when they are supposed to be so malleable to the player?
In terms of Alex, in terms
Yeah.
of connecting to Alex's interpretation, I mean, it's certainly an interesting challenge to accept, because it's me, Erika, playing Alex, who is experiencing the emotion of somebody else, and
Right.
interpreting it as Alex, right? So there's so many different layers that you can explore. But I think what I found was there is this arrow of commonality, and I think it speaks to the shared humanity of us all. So, for example, what grief is, what sorrow is, what true rage is, what unmitigated joy is. And you can contextualize that and make it very personal. But I think that there is this arrow of truth, of expression that goes through us all in experiencing those different wells of emotion that I was able to capture and then bring forward, regardless of the context, regardless of the other cast member whose
Right.
emotion Alex was absorbing or feeling. Yeah, it was a wonderful thing to realize.
Yeah, I've actually never even thought about it until you just said it as well. But like, you have to run the entire gamut of emotion, and like that is no small task. Like, that is a really intense, especially as you said that you haven't done a lot of acting before. Like, that's amazing.
I've done a lot of feelings before, so that had to have
Haven't
helped.
we all? That's awesome. Were there any particular emotions that were more difficult to tap into? Any scenes that were like really kind of draining on you?
Um, the the scenes regarding Gabe's death, and I have a younger brother, and so I think drawing on my love for my brother, my connection for him. We've gone through, periods of life where we've, been physically close or we've lived far away, but those were really difficult because I felt like in order to bring a truth and an authenticity to Alex's pain, I had to, honor that and draw on, my own deep connection with my own blood.
Yeah, man. And how about to write? Were there any particular topics or anything like that that were, I guess, cathartic to be dealing with in a game that, there's so many, they always touch on so many great topics?
I think that this game explores anger in a very interesting way. There's a number of characters that feel anger, and some of them feel it productively, some of them feel it destructively. I don't want to see too much other than I think that was probably the most interesting emotion to explore, and I hope that players will get something out of performing that emotion.
And how did it feel like to kind of take the reins, I guess, on a Life is Strange project, rather than, Life is Strange Before the Storm, honestly, it's one of my favorites. But like to be able to sort of start, an entire LIS universe from scratch. What was that like compared to taking on a project that had already begun by another studio?
It probably was different, but Before the Storm was just so wonderful to write that I didn't feel any kind of new freedom or anything like that, because we just loved playing in the world of LIS. Your own story brings its own challenges. We definitely had something that we wanted to say from the beginning, and then finding the best way to tell that was a welcome challenge. And as you know, Steph is back. We can't get away. We love her so much. So
Steph.
yeah, right. So it is. It's still tied in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was she brought back because everyone loves Steph so much, or was she always going to make a comeback?
She was brought back because everyone loves her, including us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I almost feel bad for Ryan, honestly. It's all about Steph.
You gotta give him a chance. He's a very charming character.
He is.
So
I don't know.
I know.
I will give him a fair chance, but for me, Life is Strange. It's always got to be gay. Sorry, I don't make the rules, but yeah, they both seem. But actually, so it seemed like a different approach to kind of announce these two romantic interests up front. Yeah. Was there a reason behind that at all? Was it to stop people like me going kiss while we were playing with everyone?
It's interesting that we have announced that option up front, because there's also the option too of no romance. I think that it introduces and explicitly states you can make this experience what you want it to be, right? You can put yourself in the shoes of somebody who is completely not like you and make choices that you yourself wouldn't make to kind of see what would happen, or you can model this experience after perhaps your own lived experience. And I think that explicitly stating that freedom, you'll see that that greater freedom in this semi-open world that you have in the town of Haven Springs as well.
How does the fact that Alex has been struggling with her power prior to the game's beginning sort of change the dynamic of the game? Because obviously all the other characters that we've met in LIS that have powers, there's an inciting incident and they're like bang straight away. But Alex seems to have a more troubled relationship with her power.
I think it gives more runway for her to cope with it and grow and potentially embrace it. That was very much a story we wanted to tell of somebody who had a fractured past coming to a place of healing, or at least the beginning of healing, coming to be more whole. So I think having that space of time to do that was really important to us.
Awesome.
It's interesting because you know, we all have a past. We all have parts of ourselves that we can't change, right? And being afraid to address them head on, or figure out workarounds to these parts of ourselves, I think it's a challenge, and it doesn't necessarily lend oneself to living authentically. And so I think having Alex have this power already, I would say that there is an inciting incident for her to start to accept these pieces of herself, and that in and of itself is incredibly powerful, right? It's that shift and awareness of, I've been looking at this as something that's negative. Is it really?
Interesting. Oh, I just know I'm going to cry my eyes out already. Like, all the feelings. Thank you both so much. I'm really, really excited. Yeah, can't wait. It's going to be awesome.